Hello once more from Heirloom Books at 6239 North Clark Street in Chicago, Illinois. I'm Jeff Helgeson, and today I'll be talking about a series of novels in translation from French to English that collectively comprise over 1 million words. In a famous Monty Python's Flying Circus television episode, there is a quiz show format competition to summarize the 7 volumes of Marcel Proust's À la recherche du temps perdu, in search of lost time or remembrance of things past, in less than 15 seconds. Although I decline that challenge, I will try to say something about this vast work that I hope might be of some interest and encourage the daunting but ultimately highly rewarding task of taking the narrative on, as I did once many years ago over an extended period of time, and have subsequently revisited while thinking about preparing for today's talk. In essence, I would say remembrance of things past is an impressionist literary work like the paintings of Claude Monet or the music of Claude Debussy, in which Marcel Proust encapsulates the consciousness of his unidentified first-person narrative over many years, recalling his childhood as he matures and observes and experiences life, ultimately deciding to become a writer who then undertakes the creation of a massive work which will become À la recherche du temps perdu, in search of lost time or remembrances of things past. That's about the best I can do as a summary, far exceeding the 15 seconds allotted by the Monty Python Flying Circus, and probably not really conveying much of anything with regard to Proust's massive literary effort. In more specific terms, Remembrances of Things Past, the writing of which began in 1909, was originally published in 8 volumes between 1913 and 1927, 5 years after its author's death in 1922, with the first volume having been produced at its writer's own expense without ever having been read by its publisher, but then gaining a sufficient degree of acclaim to warrant the printing of each of the subsequent volumes that were translated into English and brought out in a series of 7 novels contained within 3 massive volumes by Vantage Books in a division of the Random House Publishing Company. The first installment begins with its narrator commenting, "For a long time, I used to go to bed early," and then continues for the next 9 pages to describe its author's changing awareness encountered while falling asleep, before beginning a 35-page description of the feelings and thoughts experienced by a young boy sent to bed while his parents entertained a neighbor, Monsieur Charles Swann, a friend of the narrator's father, who had, according to family opinion, undertaken an unfortunate marriage. The visit causing the boy to be sent to bed without being given a good night kiss by his mother, resulting in extreme emotional anguish that was only assuaged when Mama, at her husband's assistance, came to spend the night in the young boy's room. Then, at the end of the overture to the novel, there is the stunning moment when the taste of a little piece of madeleine, small French sponge cake in the form of a seashell, opened a vast vista of what has been described as involuntary memory, flooding the narrator's mind with countless sights and sounds and other sensations, all of which, he states, sprang into being, town and gardens alike from this little piece of cake dipped into a cup of tea. The next section, titled Cambre, describes the small town where the narrator's family had its country home, not far from Chartres Cathedral, a village about 50 miles south of Paris called Illiers, where the writer's father, Dr. Adrien Proust, had been born, and which, according to a magazine article written by Judith Truman, officially hyphenated its name in 1971 in order to become Illiers-Cambrai, apparently, as a way to strengthen its potential tourist attraction with Marcel Proust's massive work of fiction, Remembrance of Things Past. Being introduced to the work of a writer named Burgon, the narrator, who developed aspirations against his father's wishes of becoming a writer himself, learns that this author is a friend of Monsieur Swann's daughter, Gilberte, and the young man subsequently seeks to befriend her as a way of making the established writer's acquaintance, eventually succeeding by having gained an invitation to a salon, while also coming to learn a great deal about the nature of the relationship between the young woman's father and mother, Swann, and a former courtesan named Odette. This relationship then coming to take up a full volume of the book, a section that is sometimes published separately from the rest of the work under the name Swann's Way, du Comte de Swann, and that comprised the subject matter of a 1984 motion picture adaptation starring Jeremy Irons titled Swann in Love. According to a thumbs-up review provided by Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times from 1967 until his death in 2013, and a co-author or co-host of the television show At the Movies with Tribune movie critic Gene Siskel before his death in 1999. Jeremy Irons is perfect as Swann, pale, deep-eyed, feverish, with passion, within his third movie after The French Lieutenant's Woman and Betrayal, in which love seemed necessary to his nature. Ebert continued, explaining that the film presents the story of a pale young man who goes one day to visit a prostitute and is actually indifferent to her until she stands up to him. Then he becomes obsessed. She is not the right woman for him, but her very wrongness becomes fascinating. Because she is vulgar, because she lies, because she toys with his affection, and most particularly because she lets him smell the orchid in her bodice, she becomes the most important person in the world to him, and he throws his life and reputation at her feet. Proper society, of course, disapproves of his affair and talks of nothing else. In the elegant salons where ladies and gentlemen gather, Swann is not welcome if he brings along his Odette. But because he cannot be happy without her, this is no punishment. In the most humiliating scenes in the movie, he abjectly follows her through the night, knocks on her door, he hopes is hers, and stands in her boudoir while she nonchalantly disrobes and dresses for an appointment with another man. In the novel, eventually having overcome his obsession and echoing an observation once made by Ralph Waldo Emerson, love is temporary and ends in marriage, Monsieur Swann exclaimed to himself, "To think I have wasted years of my life, that I long to die, that I've experienced my greatest love for a woman who didn't appeal to me, who wasn't even my type." The second section of Proust's work, In the Shadow of Young Girls in Flower or Within a Budding Grove, was delayed for publication by the First World War until 1919, but then won the Prix Goncourt, an award for literary innovation. In it, the narrator, visiting a seaside resort a few miles from the site of the World War II D-Day invasion landing in Normandy on the 6th of June in 1944, seeks advice about his writing, experiences his first orgasm, observes the diminished social position of Monsieur Swann and his wife Odette, visits a Jewish prostitute, and notices a group of teenage girls walking on the beach, becoming attracted to one of them named Albertine, and, although rejected by her, remains enthralled by his memory of the girls as he first saw them, the summer ending, and the resort closing for the season. In Volume 3, The Gaumont Way, de Gaumont, the narrator's family has moved for the health of his grandmother, although she does eventually pass away, and the aspirant young writer becomes introduced to a new social network of acquaintances, among whom are a group of lesbians, an aristocratic woman, the Duchess de Gaumont, and her nephew, who is serving in the French military and having an affair with Rachel, the Jewish prostitute, regarding whom he has become very jealous. A recurrent topic of conversation is the Dreyfus affair, concerning a Jewish officer in the French army who is falsely accused of selling military secrets to the Germans and, thanks to anti-Semitism, was sent to the penal colony of Devil's Island in spite of evidence fairly clearly exonerating him. When Dreyfus was ultimately released, he returned to the French army and served throughout World War I, but that's another story. Anyway, Albertine, having grown more mature, visits and exchanges a kiss with the narrator, and a, by this time, greatly aged Monsieur Swann makes an appearance, having become somewhat ill, but presenting himself as a strong supporter of Albert Dreyfus, along with such other notable individuals as French novelist Émile Zola and the noted actress Sarah Bernhardt. Volume 4 of À la recherche du temps perdu, In Search of Times Past or Remembrance of Things Past, is titled Sodom and Gomorrah, or Cities of the Plain. It includes the observation of a homosexual encounter, attendance at a high society ball, time spent with Albertine, and a decision that the two of them should go to Paris together, the narrator confiding in his mother that he feels he must marry Albertine. In the next volume, The Prisoner, the narrator has moved into his parents' Paris apartment with Albertine, the family servant, strongly disapproving of this arrangement, and he becomes bored with the relationship, but continues to maintain it until one day there is a quarrel, and Albertine leaves during the night without saying au revoir. With The Fugitive, Volume 6, Albertine having left him, the narrator tries to get her to return, sends her a letter falsely claiming that he has decided to marry someone else in order to make her jealous, but then learns that Albertine had been killed in an accident before receiving a letter from her which asks about coming back to him, and subsequently learning from a friend that Albertine had also had several sexual affairs with a number of lesbian women, causing the narrator to wish that he had somehow known about her authentic self, even while thinking that he would one day forget Albertine in the same way that he had forgotten about Swann and Odette's daughter, Gilberte. The narrator then publishes an article and visits Venice with his mother, where he learns by word of mouth of Gilberte's plan to marry. The final volume, Time Regained, begins with the narrator visiting Gilberte at Cambrai, learning from her that the two ways that he had often walked in his youth, des Côtes de Chassoin and des Côtes de Gourmand, actually joined together, as well as that her husband frequently cheats on her and that she had been attracted to the narrator when they were young, while he falls into despair regarding his ability as a writer. Then, a number of years later, during the First World War, observing an older acquaintance entering a male brothel in Paris, the narrator additionally learns that a friend who had been killed in the war had also been a regular patron of this establishment, and, after another passage of time, entering a party, the narrator again experiences a set of involuntary memories, essentially placing him outside of time, allowing him to observe that all people carry and contain within them the cumulative awareness and burden of time, with that insight inspiring him to begin to write. In a magazine article titled Confessions of a Proustomaniac, French media celebrity Gonzague Saint-Brie observed that even if Proust had been suffering from chronic asthma, living as a recluse in a cork-lined room in Paris, self-medicating with Indian camphor, ether, and opium, as well as consuming in excess of 17 cups of coffee at a single time, what he created through his writing is the literary cultural drug of the 20th century that became a habit which usually lasts a lifetime. Although Proust has been accused of disguising his homosexuality as a series of heterosexual relationships within his work, he's also writing less than a score of years since Oscar Wilde in England had been sent to prison for sodomy as a result of a libel suit that he had brought himself against the Marquis of Queensberry, who'd invented the rules for boxing, regarding an accusation of homosexuality with the Marquis's son. And yet, what Proust provides a reader, notwithstanding the particular individuals who are represented, is a tapestry of detail that finally unfolds like lived experience, filled with texture and sensual, auditory, visual detail, in addition to fathomless depths of consciousness that may well make the process of reading a remembrance of things past addictive. Of course, at the collective length of the narrative, it may well need to be habit-forming, jonesing, as some jazz musicians would have it. For me, personally, it's been over 30 years since I undertook reading Proust's work, and revisiting it still comes back to me as a parallel track to recollections of persons, places, and events that emerge as involuntary memories of my own, even while following the path that Marcel Proust wanders through his amazing sequence of recollections. Greatly oversimplifying things, I would say that it really isn't what Proust has to say, but rather the way he goes about saying it that creates the opiate dream produced by his work. In his closing words for the narrative perpetuated within the dimension of time. Demonstration of the continual relevance of Proust can be seen by an ongoing feature of Vanity Fair magazine, the Proust Questionnaire, which is used monthly to probe the psyche of individuals as diverse in recent editions as Patti Smith, Jean Smart, and Patti LuPone. In April 2005, the publication printed Proust's own responses from 1892 to such questions as, what is your most marked characteristic? A craving to be loved, or, to be more precise, to be caressed and spoiled rather than admired. What is your favorite occupation? Loving. And in which country would you like to live? One where the certain things I want would be realized, and where feelings of tenderness would always be reciprocated. Essentially, a place where love is love and no human being is illegal. I'm Jeff Helgeson. Heirloom Books is located at 6239 North Clark Street in Chicago, Illinois.